From steak selection to seasoning to cooking, today we're going over everything you need to know to cook the perfect pan-seared steak. This is a life skill I think every man needs to master. The most important thing you're going to look for when selecting a steak is its marbling. Marbling is the white lines that you see in the tissue of the steak. High marbling equals high fat content, which equals high flavor. The best thing is the price of the steak does not depend on the marbling. You can get the same steak, low marbling versus high marbling, for the exact same price, but you're getting so much more value with high marbling. The second thing you want to look for when choosing a steak for pan searing is its thickness. As a rule of thumb, I always like to use the 2-finger rule. So if a steak is thicker than 2 fingers, I'm going to reverse sear it. If it's thinner, it's going in the pan. For today's cook, we're going to be using a sirloin, which I have dry aged for 14 days in my DIY dry age outside. Future video coming on how to do that one, guys, for cheap. So we're going to remove all the pellicle and then we're going to get into seasoning. This is actually my first time dry aging steaks in my new dry ager. It seems to look really good. It smells really good as well. And that's a really good indicator that your steak is still good to eat and that it's not off. And after removing that pellicle, this is what we're left with. Now, one thing you will notice about this steak is it is larger than 2 of my fingers as well. So I am going to be splitting it right down the middle. So we're going to get 2 steaks out of this bad boy. Moving on to seasoning our steaks, honestly, I'm a massive fan of just using good old-fashioned salt. Pepper's probably the next thing that you can add on top of that if you like a little bit more of a peppery steak. I would stay away from steak rubs because some of them do have a lot of sugar in them and that is going to caramelize or even burn on the outside of the steak. And honestly, I think salt is just the best way to boost the natural flavor of the steak. When I'm eating steak, I want to taste steak. I don't want to be tasting all these other flavors anyway. Especially on something like this that's been dry aged, Wagyu. You want to taste that quality. I also think it's quite hard to under season steaks. So honestly, when you're seasoning, I would prefer to put more salt than less. Most of this salt is going to come off in the pan anyway. So you might as well put a lot more than a lot less. One other thing that I think is important to note about seasoning steaks is when to season the steak. If you're seasoning just with salt, like I've recommended, you either want to do it 5 minutes before cooking or 6 hours before cooking. And I know that's such a weird timeline, but it's because after you salt a steak like this, probably 5 to 10 minutes later, it's going to start drawing moisture out of the steak and the outside of the steak is going to become wet. If you then go and put that steak onto a pan, water is not going to mix well with heat and you're not going to get a great crust there. If you wait 6+ hours or even, as I recommend, doing it overnight, that moisture is going to mix with the salt and then is going to be reabsorbed back into the steak and you're going to get a much deeper penetration when it comes to your salt. And that's when we enter the GOAT of steak cooking equipment, a cast iron pan and beef tallow. Cast iron, honestly, is just the best thing to use. It's going to retain heat much better. It gets much, much hotter. So you're gonna be able to get that really, really deep crust while also keeping an edge-to-edge cooking on the inside of the steak. You can also use a stainless steel pan. That's probably the next best thing. So stainless steel or cast iron, they both get very, very hot and retain heat much, much better. As for cooking oil, beef tallow is going to be the king when it comes to cooking steak. Avocado oil is another one that's quite good, but beef tallow, very, very high smoke point. And again, just adds some really great umami beefy flavors that complement the steak really well. One last thing I will say, you do want to stay away from using butter at the beginning of the cook. Now we will get onto butter basting, which is how we're going to be cooking these steaks, but adding butter at the beginning of the cook when the pan is very, very hot, you're going to burn the butter. It's not going to taste very good on the steaks. It's going to go black. It's going to be bitter. Okay, so moving on to our actual cooking, the first thing we're going to do is heat up our pan. We do want to leave the cast iron on high heat just for a few minutes to heat up before putting in our tallow. Okay, so after a couple minutes, we can add in our beef tallow. Now, you know your beef tallow is ready, firstly, when it's melted, but secondly, you'll start to see some smoke rising up for the pan. That's when you know the pan is hot enough to start cooking. So in we go, pressing down. All right, and then at that 30-second mark, we're gonna flip the steaks to this side. Now, you do wanna make sure that you are positioning the steaks on hot parts of the pan. So you'll see in a minute, when I flip these steaks again, I'm not going to flip them in the exact same position. I'm going to flip them into a part of the pan that actually hasn't got anything in it at the moment, because that is gonna be the hottest part of the pan. And we're gonna go flip. So this one's gonna go flipping in, and this one is gonna go flipping over to this side as well. If you don't have a protein press, don't worry, it's not necessary, but it does help just keep in contact with the pan, which is gonna give you a much deeper crust. And you always want to have your trusty thermometer nearby so that you can keep track of those temperatures because they do rise quite quickly. And at the moment, we're just going to continue developing that crust until we hit an internal temperature of 90 degrees Fahrenheit. That is when we're going to start butter basting. Now that crust is honestly just spectacular. Flip again.
12 seconds later.
When we are hitting roughly the 90 degrees Fahrenheit, this one is cooking a little bit quicker, so we're going to start this now. We are going to turn our pan down. We do not want to have this on high heat. We want to have this on low heat now. Then we're going to go in with our butter. We are also going to go in with our aromatics, which today is rosemary, thyme, and some garlic. And this is the beautiful part of cooking steak. So once that is all melted down, you're going to rotate your pan and just start spooning that beautiful butter all over those steaks. And you can apply the butter to the areas of the steaks where the crust is not as developed because it will further the development of the crust. Don't forget to continually check the temperatures on your steaks as well. All right, this one's ready. Okay, she is good to come off as well. Last thing I want to talk about is resting your steak. It is an essential, non-skippable step. Resting the steak is going to allow the juices to redistribute throughout the steak. If I was to cut in right now, juices are going to squirt everywhere and that's going to be lost. It's going to leave the meat to be drier, less flavorful. If I just let it rest, just chill for 5-10 minutes, the juices are going to soak back into the meat. There's still going to be a little bit coming out when you cut, but nowhere near as much. It's going to be a much better, juicier, flavorful bite. Anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes is that sweet spot. I wouldn't go any less. Any longer, you're not really getting any benefit. Your meat's probably just going cold.
A few minutes later.
Let's get a good look at that cross section first. Look at that. So you can see, because these are quite small steaks, there is that little bit of a gray band on the outside. If these steaks were a little bit thicker, you would have much less of that. That is just an incredible looking steak right there. I mean, the crust is insane. Probably a little bit over where I would have liked it, but still not overcooked. This is incredible. Let's go in for a bite. That's just unreal. That crust is unlike any other crust I've ever had before. And it's definitely from dry aging the steak. It's super, super dry the outside, and that's why we've got that deep, deep crust. Wow. I'm definitely gonna be uploading a video on how you guys can also dry age steak at home for really cheap. This is awesome. Well guys, I'm gonna go enjoy my lunch now. If you have any questions about pan-searing a steak that I didn't answer in the video today, just flick them down in the comments down below. I'll get around to answering them all. And I guess I'll see you in the next one.